Hello everyone, it's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel, tap the notification bell, and like this video. That helps me to keep making videos. I'd appreciate it majorly. So, I was ready to make a video, and I'm going to still make that same video for sure. I read this really interesting, super interesting article late last night before I went to bed. And I literally couldn't even get to sleep there for a while, and it was late. It's 3:30, something like that. Could not wait to get up and make this video. I woke up thinking about it, and it's about Jeffrey Epstein, the sex trafficking case. So, but now there's news. It's breaking news. It's coming across right now. I mean, it's brand new that Jeffrey Epstein not Jeffrey Epstein, Alexander Acosta, Trump's Labor Secretary, the former U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida, that approved the so-called sweetheart, deal, slap on the wrist plea deal to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2007, 2008, that basically allowed him to avoid major jail time and avoid federal charges, has resigned. He's out, and he supposedly called the president this morning, to tell him he's resigning and whatever. So there's not a whole lot of news out there about it just yet. Speaking to Alexander Acosta, Donald Trump said Acosta was a great labor secretary. This is from that's from previously. That's from 20 hours ago. So, that's the news, and but this story is not going away at all. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Labor Secretary, under fire for having granted Jeffrey Epstein immunity from federal prosecution in 2008 after the billionaire was investigated for having run a child sex trafficking ring, has resigned, according to the White House pool. The president told reporters Acosta called him this morning, and that it was the secretary's decision. And speaking to Alexander Acosta, Donald Trump said Acosta was a great labor secretary, not a good one, according to the White House pool. Trump also said he did a very good job. He said Acosta explained his decision about Epstein in an hour-long press conference this week. I don't know if that's from before. It's not terribly important. So, but the article I read last night, and I will try to be as quickly as possible. Trying to see if he's tweeted about it. He has not. 12 hours ago. He didn't tweet about it yet. So the article I read last night is this one, and it's amazing. I don't know who Michelle Collier, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, is, and this is Intelligencer. Okay, and it's all about how he got his wealth. It's funny. My wife asked me sort of like, how did he how did he become a billionaire? And I just explained he was a hedge fund manager. And even when I was telling her a little bit about him and stuff, that he initially, he dropped out of college and he got a teaching job. Even then, she asked me, like, how did he get a teaching job at a private high school, with no college degree? Like, how the heck does anybody do that? And that's actually asked in this, or it's at least brought up in this question. And it's just interesting, that it's just, I mean, these coincidences stack up so much. It's crazy that the father, the headmaster of the school where he was a teacher, who hired him, was Bill Barr, the Attorney General's father. That's who was the headmaster of the private school. I forget the name of it, where he got his first teaching job. Well, long before he was, he was a young man, had no wealth or anything like that yet. So, and just why did he get hired to be a teacher? I think in calculus and physics at a pretty exclusive private school without having any kind of college degree, whatever. So, but this this article talks about, how did he get where did he get his money and how did he become such a billionaire? And it talks to other hedge fund managers who are extremely wealthy and got their wealth by, by managing money, by managing assets, and with sophisticating trading companies, etc. And they could never figure out exactly how the hell he got so rich. And the one that they spoke to, and I think they maybe spoke to a couple, I can't remember. I read this, and there was other stuff to review. Said basically that this individual very much reminded him of a Bernie Madoff situation, big time. And to this day, the individual, I forget his name, we'll get Douglas Cass, I believe. That's the dude, a hedge fund manager. Douglas Cass doesn't know how the hell he got so rich, So, and I'll go through that as quickly as possible. I'm not going to read the entire thing. But it's interesting, super interesting, and I don't want to rehash this over and over. I'm spending way too much time on this video already, and I'm not going to remake it. I had this idea at some point that Trump and Hillary fixed the 2016 election, and that basically Trump had something on Hillary Clinton, that was bad enough to blackmail her to lose on purpose. And I've gone through, things that support what I believe, just the raw numbers of the election, the results of the election, in particular in very important swing states. I've gone through this, but I kept maintaining that, she lost on purpose, that it's impossible that she could have lost as badly as she did, particularly in the states that were the most important, without doing it intentionally. I've always maintained, this whole thing about Trump and colluding with the Russians, was a hoax, but it was a hoax, perpetrated by him, by Trump, because the whole idea was you had to take people's attention away from what was really going on. Basically feed them some other crime, feed prosecutors, feed Congress another crime to investigate, to hide the real crime. And that you can't have an election that is rigged. You can't have that without the loser. Okay, you can't fix a prize fight with the winner. You need the loser to take a dive. It's impossible for the winner to do the opposite of taking a dive. It's just winning. So that was been my focus all along. But I couldn't once I had this idea and the numbers supported what I could never figure out how he got her to do it. Okay. And, and I've, in my journey has twisted and turned and trying to figure out that, and I thought it was the emails, the 31,000 emails that nobody's ever seen, that were destroyed, whatever. And that's really, and I focused on that and I pretty much was resounding that was it. But, and where did he get that? And first I said it was Russia. And then at one point I thought maybe it was Israel, because Israel seems to just love Trump and has benefited so greatly from him being president. It's pretty much the only country other than Saudi Arabia that, has benefited so much from him, whatever. But I when this stuff started, I immediately thought this was it, And, this is what he had on the Clintons in order to blackmail Hillary Clinton and force her to lose on purpose. So, that's where I'm at. But this story from Intelligencer from Michelle Collier, goes into how is exploring how the hell he got his money and how colleagues in the similar business as him don't know, who know the business. And I'll link it down in the description. It goes into detail in terms of that this Cass person, he would talk to his trading desks and people that, market makers and whatever. And I'm not describing it perfectly. I'm already at probably, 10 minutes. That nobody he talked to ever did any business with him. And he just couldn't figure out. And it's all throughout his career, he's been extremely, kept extremely quiet on who his client list is. That was his whole thing, is that he claimed to only work with billionaires. That was his, that's how he what his business was after he left Bear Stearns. So if I could quickly run through his career, he became a teacher, a math teacher, calculus teacher at a private school just for I don't know how long, but at some point he started to work for Bear Stearns and spent a very short time there before where he was literally working on the trading floor, running trades, whatever, But within 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit more, I'm not real sure, he became partner at the firm, and rose, skyrocketed through the firm. At some point, there was some minor infraction, and he left and started his own hedge fund. And with it, I don't know the time frame from how long he spent, running his own hedge fund and to become a billionaire. But the conclusion of this article leads you to some thread, some idea that somebody else had, that I'm going to read some of that article, believe me, just to back up what I'm saying. I'm telling you, it's breathtaking, okay, in terms of what I've been thinking all this time and what they get to towards the end of that article. And it basically says that maybe one of the ways he made his fortune was through some slightly elaborate blackmail scheme, okay, and it just this person kind of lays it out of how it could work. So let me just read some of this article as quickly as I possibly can, and then proceed that way. So long before Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to prosecution charges in Florida more than a decade ago, his fellow Palm Beach resident and hedge fund manager Douglas Cass was intrigued by the local gossip about his neighbor. I'm hearing about the parties, hearing about a guy who's throwing money around, says Cass, president of Seabreeze Partners Management. While stories about young girls swarming Epstein's waterfront mansion and the sex parties he hosted for the rich and powerful were the talk of the town, Cass was more focused on this obscure person rumored to be managing billions of dollars. He had become so wealthy without much of a track record. Cass was well connected on Wall Street, where he'd worked for decades. So he began to ask around. I went to my institutional brokers, to their trading desks, and asked if they ever traded with him. I did it a few times until the day when he was arrested, he recalls. Not one institutional trading desk, primary or secondary, had ever traded with Epstein's firm. When a reporter came to interview Cass about Bernie Madoff shortly before that firm blew up in the biggest Ponzi scheme ever, Cass told her, "There's another guy who reminds me of Madoff that no one trades with. That man was Jeffrey Epstein." How did he get the money? Cass kept asking. For decades, Epstein has been credulously described as a big-time hedge fund manager and a billionaire, even though there's not a lot of evidence that he is either. There appears little chance the public is going to get definitive answers anytime soon. In a July 11th letter to the New York federal judge overseeing Epstein's sex trafficking case, Epstein's attorneys offered to provide sealed disclosures about Epstein's finances to determine the size of the bond he would need to post to secure his release from jail pending trial. His brother Mark, a friend even offered to chip in if necessary. Continue. This is going to be so long, but if you want to watch it, you watch it. If you don't, you don't have to. I don't know that I'm going to edit it that much. So it continues. To begin with, there is much skepticism among the hedgies intelligencer spoke with that Epstein made the money he has. And he appears to have a lot, given a lavish portfolio of homes and private aircraft, as a traditional money manager. So that sentence confuses me. It did when I read it, and that's why I had to pause. But it basically says there's much skepticism among hedgies, that he made the money he has as a traditional money manager. Okay, a fund manager who knows well how what that kind of fortune is acquired says it's hard to make $1 billion quietly. Epstein never made a peep in the financial world. Epstein was also missing another key element of a typical thriving hedge fund: investors. Cass couldn't find anyone beyond Epstein's one well-publicized client, the retail magnate Lex Wexner, who's the founder of Victoria's Secret. Nor could other, and I believe the home he's living in, he bought from Lex Wexner in a strange real estate deal where I don't know the terms of it, but it's odd. Nor could other players in the hedge fund world who undertook similar snooping. I don't know anyone who's ever invested in him. He's never talked about by any of the allocators, says one billionaire hedge fund manager, referring to firms that distribute large pools of money among various funds. I'm reading the whole thing, but if you don't want to pay attention, you don't have to, man. Epstein's spotty professional history has also drawn a lot of attention in recent days, and Cass said it was one of the first things that raised his suspicions years ago. Now 66, Epstein didn't come from money, and never graduated from college. Yet he landed a teaching job at a fancy private school, unheard of, said Cass, and rose through the ranks in the early 1980s at investment bank Bear Stearns. Within no time, Cass notes Epstein made partner at the firm, and then was promptly and unceremoniously ousted. Epstein reportedly left the firm following a minor securities violation. Despite this squishy work experience, as Cass put it, at some point after his quick exit, Epstein launched his own hedge fund, J. Epstein and Company, later renamed as Financial Trust Company. Along the way, he began peddling the improbable narrative that he was so selective he would only work with billionaires. That was his whole shtick. Oddly, Epstein also claimed to do all the investing by himself while his 150 employees all worked in the back office, which Cass says reminded him of Madoff's cover story. Though it now appears that Epstein had many fewer employees than he claimed, according to the New York Times, and it was more like 20. Okay, but if I could quickly back up, if I did say this in the beginning, it's just odd that my wife asked me, how did he do that? It just stuck out to me. And how did he make so much money? I mean, my wife asked me those things as well. But in that school, not to belabor the point, was private school. The headmaster was the father of the now Attorney General, Bill Barr. So, given this puzzling set of data, the hedge fund managers we spoke to leaned toward the theory that Epstein was running a blackmail scheme under the cover of a hedge fund. And that's it, man. I mean, when I saw that statement, from everything I've been talking about, I've been talking about this for some time, man, and made many videos of it, many twists and turns. I just was shocked, and I'm going to go into, I'm not going to read this entire guy's thread, but it goes through how it would work. And basically, you would blackmail people by setting them up with, with underage girls and having proof of it of some kind. And maybe I will read through this. I'm telling you, it's pretty explosive. And then blackmail them in a way where they would have to invest with you, and you would charge them, let's say, $5 million quarterly, and they have, hundreds of millions of dollars with you, and these things wouldn't stand out, they would never trigger the IRS because, and then you just put them in like an S&P 500 fund or some elaborate, fund, but where you're not really, running money or trading, managing money the traditional ways that most huge, massive money managers, hedge fund managers run money. So, again, I think they have actually a clip of Trump and Labor Secretary, but I'm going to stay on what I'm on. Given this puzzling set of data points, the hedge fund manager we spoke to leaned toward the theory that Epstein was running a blackmail scheme under the cover of a hedge fund. And, like I said from the very beginning, if I could fast forward to the end of this story, why, of all the people that Trump could have named his labor secretary, why did he name the one person, in the entire country that had given Jeffrey Epstein the so-called sweetheart deal, slap on the wrist plea deal back in 2007, 2008 that allowed him to avoid federal prosecution and largely avoids jail time? Why? Given all the things I've been talking about. How such a scheme hypothetically would such a scheme could hypothetically work has been laid out in detail in a thread on the anonymous Twitter feed Quantian1. It's worth reading in its entirety, but in summary, it's a thorough blueprint for how a devious, aspiring hedge fund manager could blackmail rich people into investing with him without raising too many flags. Cass and I'm going to go through that in a second. Cass and former hedge fund manager Wilson Tyson both emailed the thread around investing circles, and both quickly discovered that their colleagues found it quite convincing. This actually sounds very plausible, Tilson wrote in an email forwarding the thread to others. Here's how he somehow cajoled these guys to invest, says Cass, speaking of the hypothetical blackmailed investors who gave Epstein their money to invest but managed to keep their names private. The fact that Epstein's fund is offshore in a tax haven, it is based in the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, it has a secret client list, but both add credence to the blackmail theory. I don't want to keep going on and on and on. It actually brings up Virginia Guthrie, too, who, is one of the victims who claims, various things. I don't know exactly. I know that Alan Dershowitz was just on television on Laura Ingraham last night because of denying that he ever had sex with Virginia Guthrie. Adamantly. Let me just keep going. So what did Epstein do with the money he did have under his management? Setting aside the question of how he got it and how much he had. One hedge fund manager speculates that Epstein could have just put the client money in an S&P 500 index fund, perhaps with a tax dodge thrown in. I put in $100 million. I get the S&P 500 minus some fees, he says. Speaking of a theoretical client's experience over the past few decades, the client would have made a shitload. As would Epstein. A structure like that wouldn't have required trading desks or analysts or complex regulatory disclosures. Cass has kicked around a similar idea. Maybe Epstein just put all the clients' money in U.S. Treasuries. The simplest and safest investment there is, and the kind of thing that one guy actually can do himself. If the blackmail theory sounds far-fetched, it's worth keeping in mind that it was also floated by one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Roberts Guthrie. Epstein, quote, Epstein also got girls for Epstein's friends and acquaintances. Epstein specifically told me that the reason for him doing this was so that they would owe him. They would be in his pocket, and he would have something on them, she said in a court affidavit, according to the investigative series in the Miami Herald that brought the case back to the public's attention late last year. In a 2015 filing, Guthrie claimed that Epstein debriefed her after she was forced into a sexual encounter so that he could possess intimate and potentially embarrassing information to blackmail friends into parking their money with him. She also said photographic and video evidence existed, an assertion that looms especially large now that federal investigators have found a trove of images in Epstein's home safe. And that's the end. Thank goodness. So I'm not going to go through this whole thread. I'm going to wrap this up. How it would work. But this person lays it out, and they summarize it in that article, so it'd just be too much. But if I could, I thought that word was in there. Oh, not sweetheart. There it is, dude. So and this is 12 of 13 things you would need for this to work. But it's not, these are not far-reaching, far-fetched. It's not irrational. It's totally rational. And you have, huge money manager, hedge fund managers that were throwing this around, passing it around to each other, saying this makes sense, to paraphrase. But one of the conditions, and of course the scam could be kept going as long as people are willing to pay, which is forever. If you're ever caught, you just lean on some of your friends in government to lean on the prosecutor to get you a sweetheart deal. There's almost zero risk. And now we're at the moment in time where Trump has announced that his labor secretary, who everybody reports is, gave the sweetheart deal to this individual who's now accused of sex trafficking of minors back in 2007. So I repeat, of all the things I have said, and have been talking about for some time, why of all the people in the world would he have chosen Alexander Acosta, the one person who gave the sweetheart deal, the so-called sweetheart deal, slap on the wrist, plea deal to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2007, 2008, number 12 of 13 of this this scheme that this person lays out to be his labor secretary. Okay. And I don't know how many of you, I would think that some of you have to start thinking, maybe, these things, I didn't know these things, okay? When I was saying what I was saying, that, that Hillary lost the election on purpose, all right? And I have to think that some of you are maybe starting to see that maybe, maybe I'm onto something here, man. And I don't know. That's what I think, too. And that's the story there. Thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for lasting through this whole video. If you did, I really appreciate it. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.